Just this week, Victoria's Education Minister, Natalie Hutchins, has been criticised for telling a Melbourne woman with a brain tumour to roll with the punches in response to a medical equipment shortage in Australia's second largest city. Kylie Hennessy was forced to travel 800 kilometres from Melbourne to Adelaide just last week for scans before an urgent medical procedure, which was reported on Wednesday. The 50-year-old needed a functional MRI scan on her brain ahead of a critical surgery to remove a brain tumour. However, the procedure was delayed when it became apparent there were no functional MRI machines available in Melbourne. Joining us to discuss this today is our usual cohort. We've got Caroline Council, one of Australia's leading family law practitioners. We've got Citizen Jack, if anyone can, Jack Curran. We've got Mario Beeks, author of the fantastic book, Blood-Soaked Soil and Security Consultant. And we've also got the Darren Hinch Justice Party upper house candidate for Victoria, John Heron, and he's also a fantastic advocate for victims of crime. Welcome, team.
Morning.
Thank you.
Now, rightfully, there's a lot of criticism about the unthinking words of the minister telling someone to roll with the punches, undergoing a cancer treatment. But as the noise from demands for a proper apology, which I note she tendered by Twitter, which is reminiscent of being dumped by text message or fired by Twitter rather than front the media, are we overshadowing the fact that there are only 3 of these machines in Victoria and 2 of them are currently out of service?
We discussed this last week about if you have medical procedures. I'll park the so-called minister's comments for others to discuss. But remember when I said that with my son's cleft palate procedure, we've taken precautions to explore to take him interstate or back to Ireland, where there's proper medical facilities. Now, this MRI situation is just one that you know about. Now, in Victoria, where there's one, there's 100. So let's go straight to it. When people are in desperate need of medical treatment, and specifically for their children, especially with their children, they will look to go elsewhere, right? So it's well known now in the populace in Victoria that if you're in trouble, if you need a serious medical procedure, so if you can't afford it, you go away. What's that? That's a failed state.
If I can add on something on this, and I'm the only one who is not born in this country, and after 22 years, and I always will praise wherever I go how Australia is a great country, and truly it is. People are magnificent, everything is great. But what I don't understand, we have the only one state who is continuously how the downfalls and very serious downfalls and shortcomings, Victoria. Not having that machine, is not just for the one person, but for society and community itself. And what is that message? What message they're sending out, possible tourists and everybody who is visiting, Victoria? In case something happened to you, you're gonna be flown out from such a great country to be, examined in other state or in another country. And most importantly, there is no way somebody can convince me that this is just coincidence. 2 years sitting at the back, during the lockdowns, they can do the stock taking, what's working, what is going to happen once when we open the country. So it's like, this is going directly on a government of Victoria, that shortcoming and message of the health minister. It's truly disgusting. It's disgusting.
And I'll pick up that point, Mario, as well. It shows a complete lack of empathy. If you're up against it, and if you haven't budgeted correctly, which God knows why you wouldn't, and God knows why you wouldn't have done that inventory whilst we're in lockdown, given that we weren't actually servicing the Victorian populace from a medical perspective. Why would you say something like that? It's inconceivably appalling. It's not just glib, it's downright it's inhumane to that individual. But picking up John's point, where there's this individual, there are others as well, and I think this is tip of the iceberg. The Victorian government has a shameful record when it comes to delivering medical support to the populace of Victoria. And this is why we've gone from being a great state to a state that's in an appalling condition, particularly as far as, you know, ambulances are concerned, as far as the medical field is concerned.
Yeah, if I could just add something, Caroline, I'll pick up now on you. You know, when you add on this, 33 people died recently because of waiting the ambulance. MRI doesn't work. The question that, you know, you ask yourself, me as a taxpayer, you know, they take taxes from us. So, you know, the government invests in all this infrastructure, medical equipment, and list goes on. And suddenly you have the exodus of medical care, you know, I mean, in every shape or form, where the face of this medical establishment, Minister of Health, comes with that message to somebody, you know, I mean, it's not just inhumane, you know, I mean, can't find that word, but I think again, this is not coincidence that people have no access to the care in Victoria. I don't think that's a coincidence because 33 people died waiting 000. Now you can get the MRIs, which is obviously necessary for the cancer and other diseases related, you know, I mean, search analysis. It's not coincidence. I don't think it's coincidence.
I just add from a citizen's point of view, accountability is one of the most important things that we've got none. At the moment, we've got everyone just pointing fingers left, right, and centre. But in the meantime, people are literally sick on the beds or not getting to the hospitals. So the system, let's call it, is broken. If it's broken, how do we fix it? Who's accountable? Because at the end of the day, everyone's just paying lip service, and they just go, they get their $500,000 paycheck, they get their $300,000 paycheck, and go home at night and go, wow, what a good day I had. But mum and dad and people like us sit there going, well, what's going to happen next? What is next? You know, there's also all this crisis talk, but no accountability.
I think what's really sad about this, Michael, also is that this isn't an isolated incident either in terms of equipment. So when you know somebody that's going through a serious and life-threatening illness, and they find out, for example, there's a machine that's readily available in other modern Western countries that might cost the taxpayer $100,000, but the government actually hasn't bothered to buy it. And I know of that incident. It relates to Jim Steins, the footballer. I was on the board of Reach. There was one machine. He was told, don't worry, you could easily fly over to America and get the scan done. And then he researched it and he found out the machine cost $100,000. Ridiculous. Unacceptable. And as John says, what about the children? If children have these issues.
I mean, yeah, Carol, what country use flying you from Australia, you flying your kid overseas? You know, I'm grateful enough for the people in Westmead Children's Hospital, because I know about my kid for 12 years, there was never a problem. And even machine was some maintenance, they will say like, you know, we can put you somewhere else if you need it quickly, right? Or Doppelgram, whatever they call all these things, you know, PET scans, whatever they are. And, you know, but in Victoria, like, you know, the kids, you know, the future of our society, you know what I mean? What legacy we leave them there, you know what I mean? So I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you ever go to the Children's Hospital, which we've been with my son's condition several times, it is absolute bedlam. And the problem there is not necessarily recent, actually. It's always been bedlam, without getting into the things that we discover. But it's the mismanagement therein. So you mentioned a couple of military things, Mario. You mentioned the word downfall, if you remember the movie.
Yeah.
A little bit like that, and a little bit like the Ukrainian offensive and the Russians doing a strategic withdrawal, right? It's that sort of language that's being used by that minister. And any dealing I have with the regime, just as Jack said, if I'm dealing with police, corrections, and all in one hit, nobody is accountable. It's all over there. They'll handle it, not me. So the salary, Jack actually hit the nail on the head. That's what they're paying. Their care factor is zero because, like I keep saying, in a banana republic, in a climate of impunity, if you just toe the line, nothing will happen to you. And this is where we are now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the military, John, and Mario, you would have this, and even Jack in IT and Caroline with your practice. It's just common sense that you have a worst case scenario. So we have 3 of these machines. Fair chance one will go down. Well, we've got 2. Well, we need to go worst case scenario. What happens if 2 or 3 go down. Where's the contingency? We have, during fire season, we bring them in from interstate. Where was the one's down, we need to prepare to what other resources could we send them to? Gee, 2 are down, let's do a stock take. Can we send them to South Australia, New South Wales, Perth? Where can we get these people to? Because the worsened outcomes by delaying these things, because this is the beginning of the process for this poor lady, the scan to enable the surgery to go ahead. If she misses the scan and then the surgery gets bumped back, and we're talking about brain cancer, we're not talking, you know, I don't think there's a window of time where you can go, well, we'll just relax, it won't get any worse. Where is the contingency planning? Who's going to put their hand up and go, we should have seen it coming, but we didn't? You're
so sweet, Michael. There is no contingency plan. I think that was a rhetorical question. But honestly, we know that supply is a major issue worldwide. Okay, so that's a given. But we knew that that was a problem 12, 18 months ago. We knew that supply, probably smarter people realised the moment the pandemic hit that there were going to be supply chain issues. So care factor, instead of being 0, should have been 80, 90%. Care factor around how good is our system? How ready are we to ensure that we can pick up medical services where we left off? I think it was a godsend for this current government.
It is, yeah, Colin, I agree with you.
Shut the doors of the hospitals and say, oh, sorry, we're overburdened, we have to keep the beds free for those who have COVID. I think it was a gift from the heavens to allow them. Oh, and by the way, they didn't even spend that time to patch over the cracks. They just left the cracks sit. This is what's so outrageous about where we find ourselves now.
Having worked for the regime, you need to know how they roll. I think I'm listening to all this and working on the inside, right? So anything, Jack will understand this. So any IT issues around, there's no DRS, okay? There is no contingency. When you talk about they should have planned, the way that the groupthink works of the regime now is that anyone that does something out of the ordinary like that, outside the blinkers, will get their hands chopped. So nobody does it, right? You're on what you call, internally we used to call this hiding to nothing, all right? So if you're in one of these hospital management planning meetings and you said, what happens if X happens, right? Everyone would like look at you and say, be quiet, right? That's how they roll. So when everyone goes, oh, I should have done this and that, plan that, they're incapable of doing that. The management they've got in there and that collective group thing and how an authoritarian regime rolls, this is a result. This is a result with one MRI. This is a result across health, law and order, infrastructure. Look at the roads, look at the transport system, on and on and on. Where does this go?
And John,
management.
And management, thank you so much. Because if you look at the Victorian government and you look at its budget, okay, let's look at it like it's a major business. Oh my God, you'd be insolvent, you'd be bankrupt, you just wouldn't survive as a business. And this is where government needs to get to, the degree of accountability, the degree of capacity, the degree of being able to discharge your duties, responsibilities to the tax-paying public, because these are our dollars not at work at the moment. So I just think government needs a huge wake-up call. And unfortunately, because of the entrenched systems, you have to wait for the voice of opposition to highlight those cracks and for the system to, God knows when the system will change.
If I can just start something on this one, it's a visual thinking, you know, like in a situation like a COVID, you're absolutely right. Instead of we addressing the issues while everything was locked down, in any department, health and anything it was not done. And we're talking now about incompetence. We talk about people who are running departments and the portfolios who are incompetent. Nobody asked them, you know, I don't know what this lady Hutchins background it is and her resume, I'm not interested. But what you need to do is you need to work like a military. You need to work what you have not what you wish for. So these things need to be addressed urgently and tell the people we have the shortage of these machines, how we can, manage and improvise, adjust the situation to the now current the problem and issues. Secondly, John, you said the law enforcement, and the Carolyn said that machine costs of $100,000. I was watching from sitting here, riot gear on a police in Victoria with a riot subduing weapons, which cost millions. Millions was being spent on a riot gear, which was being used against taxpayers. Now, why would you do this, improving the law enforcement so heavily with that riot gear and everything else, where you could buy a couple machines in the meantime? And that was what bothers me. When I see the heavily armed police, standing in the streets in Melbourne, and I know how much that equipment costs. I can give you exact, the figure. It's at least $7,500 just in equipment, not the weapons, just equipment per person. Now, think how many cops and how many machines could be bought in Victoria for past 2 years. But investment was always going in different direction, no direction for the health and benefit of the people.
Let's also not forget we have a quarantine centre that's costing us, I think, $6.5 million a month not to use. We have a desalination plant that's costing us $650 million a year not to use, and yet something that keeps people alive, something that is fundamental at the start of their journey through their treatment, suddenly we don't have it. Surely an excess capacity, something that you could sit in mothballs, like the spare tire in the back of my car, I hope I never have to use it, but it's there just in case I do. Surely an excess capacity needs to be built into the health system so that this sort of thing doesn't keep happening.
I think if you've lived in authoritarian regime countries, Mario would know this. So I'll pick two. So Haiti in Zimbabwe. So you've got poverty all around, but the security forces very well equipped, dressed, their families looked after. They operate with impunity, as we sort of know Victoria Police does. This is what you've got. For someone to go, well, and in those countries as well, the hospital system's collapsed, period. And this is the road we're going down, that trajectory. Mario's like gobsmacked is the amount of money spent on there. Again, if you look at something like Victoria Police, which had a 90% increase in budget since Andrew's last election victory, and policing standards and their actual general policing has collapsed, where's that money gone? This is where it goes all through the Andrews regime. It goes on higher salaries for cronies. Like in Southeast Asia, you can bribe someone under the table. What you do in Victoria, pick up on what Jack said, you give them $300,000 or $500,000 a year job, no experience, bingo.
But
No
do what I
accountability.
say, don't do what you should do. And of course, you want a police force that's well militarized, because the public eventually is going to come for you. So you're actually building in protection for yourself because you know you've failed.
The Marianne Thomas, the Minister for Health, had to come out.
My local member
had to come out and try and clean up this mess, but again, no explanation apart from she said that there was a possible miscommunication, that there may have been a machine available. But again, you would think it would be about being proactive and being on the front foot. And two machines are down. Let's go through the list.
Experience, Michael?
Yep.
Do you know her background and experience?
No.
She worked for a union. She was a teacher for 2 years and worked for the ALP. That's it. That's the health minister. That's my local member.
And meanwhile, Martin Foley, with experience, with an understanding of the system, whether he had done a good job or not, has stepped away and received praise for the great job he did. And this woman with that level of experience has to find her feet. I don't understand something that, surely you go to the boss and say, boss, this machine's broken, this machine's broken. There are people waiting to use it. What are we going to do? And they just look at you and go, well, everyone will just have to wait. We're talking about cancer diagnosis. My goodness sake, why isn't there a contingency contact
only one
everyone.
person.
We're going to fly them to Adelaide. We're going to fly them to, you know, we're going to make this right. We're going to run a machine 24 hours. Surely there's got to be someone that has got to step up here.
Why somebody is taking a portfolio if he's not competent? This is what I don't understand. I will never be able to be the lawyer just by listening Caroline on John, you know, I mean, for 10 years and say like, I can be Minister of Justice. What I know about justice, I never exercised justice. I never been involved in education and nothing. Same for the health. What I don't understand, how does ministers being picked for those roles if you don't have the background in that field? And you will agree with me. You can't be the health minister if you don't have the some type of education, some type of exposure to the health portfolio. But being the party member and the union member, I understand that one. I live in those times.
But that's 90% of them, Mario. That's their background. And you've got the leader that hasn't had a job, right? And with scant 7 years to do an arts degree. So that's a shining example you look up to. Can you imagine running a small business with that, let alone a corporation? What do people think overseas when they hear that? It's a laughing stock, you know.
So that's not a question, John. How did this news actually hit? How does this case hit the news? This is what I'm surprised that that lady, she got the time on the air. I mean, in the news. Thank God.
Yeah, how many other people have been booked for those two broken down machines? Because I presume they don't sit idle, they're back to back. How many other people are in the same situation? How many don't have the resources to be able to drive to Adelaide or the wherewithal to be able to ring around and find an option and miss their scheduled surgeries? Well, we're going to have to leave it there, guys and girls. Caroline, we're running out of time, so we'll reconvene next week for another chapter in the, oh my goodness, I can't believe this stuff is happening. So thanks for your time, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.